Hello, how are you? Normally, I would say I'm fine, but given this pandemic, um, to be honest, I'm not feeling fine. I feel like as if I'm in grief. And so I went back to Dr. Elizabeth Kübler-Ross's 5 stages of grief and applied them to myself, and maybe maybe they might apply to you as well. The first stage is denial. Well, I certainly experienced that. Couple of months ago, when I first heard about the virus in Wuhan in China, where it originated, I just felt like, well, it's a Chinese problem. They'll solve it. And then it seemed the next thing you know, it was out in Washington State and then in Vancouver. And yet still, I kind of denied the reality of it by thinking that it was still far away. And then it came to my province here in Ontario, where I live. And then it came to my city, Hamilton. And then it came to my community. And I couldn't deny it any longer. In fact, I was personally affected. Last week or so, went through a drive-through to get a coffee. I later found out that an employee of that restaurant had tested positive for the COVID-19 virus. I contacted the public health authorities. Um, they assessed me and said that my symptoms at that time, I thought I had a cold. Uh, Runny nose, a tickly, scratchy throat, and a dry cough. But they said my symptoms weren't severe enough to warrant either a test or treatment, and they advised me just to stay home and self quarantine for 14 days, which I've been doing for the last 7 days or so. So I couldn't deny it any longer. Well, I went through the second stage, which is anger. And I was angry. I was angry that we seem to be so ill prepared for this. Yet, for years, scientists and health officials have been talking not if a pandemic was going to come, but when. Why weren't we better prepared? I was angry. I was also angry at the people that panicked and started panic buying, hoarding toilet paper of all things. I mean, give me a break. What's that all about? But the more important things like hand sanitizer, for example, can't be found. Although my brother did find a small bottle of it and gave it to me, I virtually coveted it. He found it in a small corner shop. It was expensive, and that made me angry too. Why were people price gouging, taking advantage of us? And then I went from anger to bargaining. That's the third stage. I started bargaining. I started, saying to myself, well, if I wash my hands like we're being told, and if I use the hand sanitizer, and if I stay indoors and don't go near other people, then the virus won't touch me. And I wondered then, who was I bargaining with? God? Is that the kind of God that that I want? One that you have to bargain in order to be kept safe? That sounds very medieval to me. But there I was, bargaining in the hope that I would stay safe. And it's what we all do. It's not that it's normal. It's normal that we do that. And if you find yourself doing that, there's nothing humorous about it. And I can laugh at myself, um, but it is something that we all do. And then the fourth stage, which Kubler-Ross refers to as depression, but maybe a better word for it is a kind of sadness. And that sadness is usually accompanied by fear and anxiety. And so that sadness gets fed, for example, by watching continuous 24/7 news, which only I find it's good for the information, but to watch it repetitively simply reinforces the fear and the anxiety. So I made a choice to limit the amount of news that I watch. But I have felt a sadness. I woke up the other day at 4 in the morning, almost feeling a kind of a panic attack. My chest was, my heart was beating in my chest, and I was lying there thinking horrible thoughts like, "Oh my God, I'm going to die." And, I live on my own. I have a brother nearby, but it's like, what happens if I die during the night? Who's going to take care of me? Will I be okay? And then you get really gloomy thinking, oh, we're all going to die. This is horrible. And, find yourself flip-flopping. Sometimes I go back to bargaining then, or I go back to being angry. I get angry at our leaders who still, in many cases, seem to be in a state of denial that things are as bad as they are. And that scares me. And then I bargain more. And then I get more depressed. Yeah. But then this morning I woke up, and I think I experienced what Kübler-Ross calls the fifth stage, acceptance. I do feel more accepting. It helped that it was a beautiful spring day today and the sun was shining, blue sky, and it was so quiet. All you could hear were the birds singing. In fact, I could hear birds from blocks away, just like when I was a kid, when there wasn't as much traffic as there is today and noise pollution. So I went out for a walk. I am allowed to go out to exercise, and it was like a ghost town. There was nobody on my street normally at this time. Early morning, there'd be kids going to school, parents accompanying them, young people going to high school, people going to work in their cars. There was no one. I was the only one out there. I walked my brother's dog. And I thought, okay, we are experiencing a pandemic, unprecedented in our time or in my lifetime. But people have gone through these things before in the past. We'll get through it. I'll get through it one way or another. I'll tell you one thing I did, and some of you know that I'm an end-of-life planning consultant. Well, I made sure that my end-of-life plan was up to date, that my will and my powers of attorney and my advanced medical directive and funeral wishes and everything have all been written down. So if nothing else, no matter what happens to me, whether I live or die, I have a plan in place that at least will, I suppose, ensure that my loved ones are taken care of. Not that I have a lot to leave them, but at least they can know. They can have peace of mind knowing that my wishes are written down, and they'll know that. And I feel good about that. So there you go. Most of the time, my job demands that I have the answers, that I'm in control. But I'm just a granddad, who is experiencing grief at the moment. Grief meaning I'm experiencing losses on a lot of different levels, perhaps just as you are. And maybe those stages of grief apply or don't apply to you. For me, they're just one way of understanding the feelings I'm experiencing. And you might not go through all five. You might go through a couple. You don't have to go through them in any particular order. But I hope that by talking about my own experience today has helped you. You're not alone. None of us are, even though we are self-isolating at the moment. Anyway, I want you to stay healthy and be kind to one another, and we'll get through this together. Thank you very much.